Hello and welcome to this new lesson. In this lesson, we need to configure an archive storage for our FortiSIEM in order to have more storage capacity for long retention of events. If you remember, guys, in the installation session, we configured or we installed one disk for event storage, where we selected the ClickHouse database option. Actually, this storage is the online storage. It's part of the super node itself, where we have an all-in-one installation, so all the events are installed in one node on the supervisor. And actually we can check this from the admin page. If you go to the setup and storage, you have two options, online and archive. So what we did in the installation was the online storage. In this lesson we will try to configure the archive. So let's revise first the online storage that we have configured. If you remember, guys, this screen we received right after activating the license, where we added the hot tier. It was /dev/sde. I will just remind you guys, I have here the FortiSIEM supervisor. So this command we used to define our storage, this one. So before the installation or the mapping actually of the hot tier, this one was not there. We have this as unpartitioned space 300 GB, and we just pointed this or defined the /dev/sde here, and we did the deploy and test. After that it is configured actually, and the FortiSIEM became accessible. Now in this lesson we need to configure the archive storage. And to configure an archive for the ClickHouse database option, the only way is to use an NFS. Okay, so for other database types, maybe the archive options are different, but for the ClickHouse option, the only available archive method is using NFS. And as I said before, the ClickHouse is now the recommended method by Fortinet. So basically we need to configure an NFS server and connect it with our NFS, with our FortiSIEM, sorry. Okay, so the NFS is just a location, a network location, network file server, where you need to install the NFS utilities. The libraries available for the CentOS or Rocky Linux, and then you will map it or connect it with your FortiSIEM. We will see that together. I have here one node. I name it NFS-server. This is actually a basic Rocky Linux installation. So you can see here the Red Hat release. It's CentOS Linux. It's not Rocky Linux, it's CentOS, but you can install it on Rocky Linux as well. Okay, so basically this is the steps I have. Okay, so you have to validate your Red Hat release is greater than version 8 or use Rocky Linux, as I said, the same version that you have for the FortiSIEM. I think our FortiSIEM is Rocky Linux. Yeah, it's Rocky Linux release 8. So either Rocky Linux or CentOS, both should work for the NFS installation. Okay, after that we need to install the NFS utilities and to create some directory where the FortiSIEM would be able to upload the archive, grant the permissions, export the folder so the super node would be able to access, add some firewall rules, and finally test from the FortiSIEM. So we'll do the steps together. So the first step is to actually install the NFS utilities. So here, this is actually the IP of my NFS server, and this is the session and the IP for my FortiSIEM supervisor. In my case here, in my lab, I only have one node for one supervisor node acting as all-in-one. We don't have workers, but if you have workers, you need also to export the or make the NFS accessible for the workers as well, because the workers are doing some functions beside the supervisor for processing and storing events. So in that case, both the workers and the supervisor should be able to access the NFS. So the first command is to install the NFS utilities. You should make the NFS server accessible to the internet, or if you can download the utilities offline and upload to the NFS server in case you are running an air-gapped inside an air-gapped environment. In my case here, this lab, the server has internet access. I issued a command. It tells me that this will gonna install the NFS utilities, so I will choose yes. As you can see, the installation is very quick. Okay, it's complete. Next step, we need to check the server status, the NFS server status. Okay, so it's actually inactive. Okay, now we need to actually restart it. So I will restart the server, or actually start the service first. Okay, let us check again. So now it's active. Okay, so here let's say this is and start if required. Actually guys, I will include this file in the resources section of that lesson. Then we need to create any folder, for example this one, slash FortiSIEM123. okay, and then we need to grant all the permissions to that folder. So if we check the folder permissions, 1, 2, 3, you can see I missed one letter. So you can see here that actually you need to check the slash itself. You see here that the right permissions is not granted. So the current permissions is like 755. If you think of it like binaries, the R is 1 or 0, the right is 1 or 0, the X is 1 or 0. So this one is all set. So 111 means 7 in binary terms. This R is set is 1. This right is not set, 0, and this X is set, so it's 101, which means 5, and again 5, so 755. Actually, you need to set the permissions to read, write, and execute. So it should be 777. So this I need to do actually here. Okay, we can double check again. Now it's read, write, and execute. Next, we need to export the NFS folder previously created, and to do that we need to edit some file called or located at the /etc/exports. This file is where you tell the NFS server that these folders should be accessible from other machines. So it's like the sharing option in the Windows. Okay, so to do that we need to edit that file and put this line. Okay, so we need to put actually the path for the folder, and here I'm putting the IP of my supervisor, and here you tell some options like read, write, and sync the content of that folder with the FortiSIEM supervisor. In my case, I only put one IP. This is the supervisor all-in-one node, because this is the whole components my setup. The collector is not required to access the NFS. But if you have a more distributed architecture where you have workers, so your ClickHouse cluster contains multiple workers with different shards, in that case you need to make them accessing also the NFS server. Okay, so this line is enough for us to edit the exports file. Okay, and then I press I and insert. Okay, and then save the file. Okay, we can validate the file contents. Okay, now we need to run this command to export the content of that file to the outside. So just run this. So it's telling exporting this folder to that IP. And if you have firewalls in your firewall enabled in your environment or on your NFS server, you need to run this commands as well to enable the or to grant the NFS and the RPC to that server. In my case, I think I don't have firewall running. Okay, so anyway, it doesn't harm. Next, we need to restart the NFS server for the changes to take effect. Okay, and finally we can check the status of the NFS server. So starting, it's started and ready. Finally, we need to verify that the NFS server folder, the exported directory inside the NFS server, is accessible from the supervisor node. So we come here to the supervisor and we run the command show mount -e, and I put the IP of my NFS server. So you can see here the FortiSIEM 123 folder is accessible. Now we are ready to go to the GUI and configure the NFS. Okay, so again guys, from storage and archive, not the online. The online we did before during the installation. This is the minimum requirement to have an all-in-one supervisor node up and running. The archive can be done later, like what we are doing now. So here I put the IB 192.168.100.175, which is the NFS server. Okay, and then the directory is this one, the /FortiSIEM123, and then you can test, and if the test is successful, you can deploy. So we have a successful test, so I here deploy, save, so things are configured. Now we are ready to configure the retention policies for our setup. So coming to the settings, you have here retention policy. Okay, so we go to this section. Currently we have only online retention policy available, because the archive option is not yet reflected. It takes some time till you get another section for the archive. So let's define the online retention policy first. We put enable, and then here you select which devices can actually store or this policy applies for. So we select all devices, or you can actually open your devices and start select them one by one, or groups of devices. So for my case here, I will select all devices, all event types, and then I will define the retention period based on the sizing exercise that I did before prior to the deployment. So the minimum for online retention according to many regulations is 3 months, like 90 days. You can put a description and then save. Next you need to define the archive settings, but let's wait for some time. We can refresh to see if this the retention policy for archive became available. So now yes, you can see archive retention policy is now available. And to define a new archive retention policy, all you need to do is to put the time period, the total number of days you need to keep the logs in the archive. So to decide on this value, let's first talk about how the retention policies are working between the online and the archive. Actually guys, from the day you configure the archive start to sync with the online retention policy. So if we have the retention policy, like in our case here for the online storage is 3 months, after 3 months the archive will contain also the 3 months logs. They are the same. So assume that at any point in time in our organization we need to have 1 year worth of logs. So in that means that we need to configure the archive to be 12 months or 365 days, not only 9 months. Don't say that I will keep 9 months of logs in the archive and I have 3 months of logs on the online, so the total will be 12, because we get to know that 3 months of this, assume that I put here 9 months, assume this is 9 months, I will convert later to days. If I put here 9 months for the archive, so 3 out of them will be actually those guys, the one in the online storage, and the rest 6 months will be older logs. But if my total retention for the organization is 1 year, in that case I need to actually put here 12. So 3 of them is the ones in the online storage and the rest 9 will be older logs. I hope this is clear for you guys. So the 12 months means if we convert to days, it will be 365 days. Okay, so now is the online retention and the archive retention policies. If we go for the archive data, actually no archive data will appear now until the archive process is done overnight. So tomorrow you will or the next day you will see here, you'll start to see here the archive data organized in year, months and day. So let's wrap up what we did, guys. So first of all, we configured an NFS server, and it's very easy. Just have one Rocky Linux machine or CentOS machine with version 8 or higher, and then we run through these steps to make the installation and grant the permissions, and we tested from the supervisor that it's accessible. Then we came here to the GUI, and in the storage we have configured this folder and the IP. After that we are able to configure the retention policies. Actually the online retention policy is available to configure from day 1 of the installation, but this is the new policy that we are only able to do after we have configured the archive. So I hope the lesson is beneficial for you guys, and see you in next lesson.